That's exciting. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's good to see all of you. Just as a preview to get you all excited, we are not asking you any Slido questions. Oh, I know. Let's just cancel the conference now. Don't worry, but we will ask you a Qualtrics question later in caucus, so we do have a QR code for you to scan and ask questions. But I'm Justin Lee, Deputy Director of the League, for those who don't know me. Carson Eilers, our Policy Director, and we're going to spend the next 20 minutes kind of walking through what happened during the session, what Kate talked about a little bit with we're calling an ultra sprint now, sprint/marathon, and what happened. So more bills, more problems. A lot of things happened this year. So quick quiz, and some of you probably know this already. How many bills were introduced this year in the legislative session? How many bills were introduced? Now, turn to your neighbor, say your answer, then you can be really smart when I put this up. Okay, some of you talk very loud for talking to your neighbors. 959 bills, very close. I heard some very close ones. 959 bills introduced. 134 more bills than prior 9-year average. So they're introducing more bills, and this is a trend we've seen going up more than 9-year average. How many substitutes and amendments did we see drafted this last year? So not just bills, so this is when they're going to amend a bill, they're going to substitute the language out in the bill. How many substitutes and amendments do you think they had? 1,110. Whoever saw this presentation before, you're correct. It is 1,110 substitutes and amendments adopted. Now we've got to go through, so just look at that number, 959 bills introduced. Basically the same number plus where they're amending it, substituting. That means league staff has to go read through all of those. Got to find the little hidden Mickeys that are in there, except for they're not fun surprises, and see what's going on in the bills. So a lot of bills that are out there. And that's 6 fewer than last year, but 118 above the prior year average. So the number of substitutes going up. 279 bills tracked, which is 61 more bills than the prior 3-year average. So we're tracking more than ever before. Then how many bills passed? 582. Someone said with a lot of confidence from the back of the room. That's correct, 582. That is 9 fewer than last year, but the second highest number ever. So Carson, talk about a little bit about what those trends look like as we've been going over the last few years.
Yeah, well, and this won't be news to you. Clearly, some of you have attended LPC and even paid attention, so thank you for that. Yeah, this has been I started, my first legislative session was back in 2017 as a legislative intern, and I remember people remarking back then on the record number of bills that we had seen. Unfortunately, this is a trend, not an anomaly. So what this means, more substitutions, more amendments. It means more feedback that we need from you. It means more time reading bills in the middle of the night trying to figure out what they do. It means that more and more, the more bills introduced, more bills passed. Typically for local governments, that means the more changes to make to your codes. Yeah, we just see more and more and more, and not really a great thing when you're talking about laws. And yeah, we talked about the number of bills passed. This year, Justin and I were just talking about this, I would argue, had the Senate not spent some time caucusing a lot of time caucusing on the last night, I bet this would have been a record number and we would have probably blown it out of the water.
Yep. So of the 962 total bills drafted, there's also a couple interesting things here. 568 of those come out of the House, 342 Senate bills. That is a big deal. Usually the Senate barely, if they even click over into the 300s, but they were well over into that with 342 Senate bills this year. Some of that can be attributed to just a few legislators. So there are a few representatives who like to run a lot of bills, and they became senators, and they took those bill files with them. But we're seeing, again, just more and more coming out of everything. And then as we track them, 279 bills tracked, but just a breakdown of what the positions were that the Legislative Policy Committee, the LPC, took. So we supported 34 bills. We opposed 26 bills. We're neutral on 56. And this one's a big one, 161 monitored bills. So monitor was a new position that we took this year, that we put into the bylaws. And these are bills that either we just aren't too worried about, that didn't do much, we need to track it, but we were fine with it, but not quite neutral. And that was a new position that actually helped us out in knowing this is not a bill we need to necessarily spend a lot of time on, but this is a bill that we need to watch. One that was no position, and then one that was position pending. The position pending, well, actually both these kind of interesting. The no position was the fluoride bill. We take a no position when we have a split opinion from the membership, and you guys were all over the place on fluoride, so we had no position on that one. The second one was position pending, and that was 337, the Beehive Development Agency bill, and that's because it just sort of went away. And so we just let the position sit there pending after LPC. So yeah, some of these bills are not a big deal. They're in the universe of bills, they're a neutral red dwarf. We're not too worried about them. They're kind of innocuous. And there's other that are big quasars, and they pull all of the energy and time into it, like 337 did for a week. And so there's a lot there, but the big question we get all the time, Carson, and you can answer this one, why do we engage on bills we don't like?
Yeah, that is the golden question, Justin. And I think even to reference back to that previous slide, you saw that we only had 26 bills that we ended up opposing. That number starts a lot higher. We started opposing a lot more bills. And then as we work through them, as we address concerns, sometimes they're innocuous, even incidental changes made to code that could adversely affect cities. Sometimes that's a big fight. Part of the reason you see so many bills end up in that neutral and monitor position is because we're able to fix so many issues. So the reason that we fix those, and we always have this deliberation whenever there's a new bill that we don't like, we have this question of, do we try to fix it? Do we fight it? Do we just let it go? Usually not the latter. The problem with trying to fix a bill is once you engage on that, you take some ownership of it. That takes a lot of staff time. That takes a lot of credibility trying to justify that position, even if it's something that we don't necessarily like. We always try to make sure that we can get bills to a place we can work with. We would still oppose them even if we worked on it and it didn't get to a place we loved or could live with even. But the reason that we do this and we don't just fight everything is because the majority of bills pass. It's funny when you're trying to get a bill through, it doesn't feel like that, but the majority of bills pass. Most bills that don't pass, it's procedural. So on the last couple of days of the session when they suspend the rules and they're just churning through bills left and right, really it just becomes a shot clock. They'll just keep going until basically they run through a prioritization list. You never know what bills are going to make it and what aren't. It's kind of just a guessing game at that point. So we'll say many of those bills, almost the majority of them that don't pass, it's a guessing game. They could still pass. Like it's very hard to stop a bill at that last night because everything's just churning and churning and churning. When I started with the league, it was harder to get bills through committees. I don't have any, we don't actually have numbers going back then, but the committees tended to be apply much more scrutiny. It was harder to get an incomplete bill through committee. And now, again and again, we see committees say, you know what, I trust the process, we're gonna pass this through. There was even one comment where somebody said, we don't really have enough people here in this committee to make this decision on this big of a policy. I'm not comfortable with it, but we're gonna advance it through to the next chamber to have a bigger conversation. So vast majority, 90% pass through committee. Only 2.5% of bills fail on one of the floors. So if you are fighting a bill all the way through, you have the odds stacked against you, and you have a very slim chance of stopping a bill on the floor. It happens, we've done it, but it's a gamble. And unless you're willing to take the chance of a bill just not getting prioritized, it's a tough call.
Sitting there with that decision all the time, and this is where we go to the LPC and say, where do we prioritize these fights? Is this a fight that we can live with something, we don't love it, but it's a little bit better, but since at this point, if it gets to the floor, there's a 97.5% chance it's getting through. If it comes up to a vote, then we've got to make that decision. So we asked you a lot of questions. We talk about Slido. We joke about Slido all the time, but we know we love Slido. And we asked you a lot of questions. Carson, talk quickly about, what did we talk about with Slido and how many responses do we get back?
Yeah, 38 LPC questions. We only had one LPC where we did not ask any Slido questions. We have been trying to be more disciplined because we know
we
as
love
much as
asking you guys
everybody loves
questions.
it, not everybody loves going back into Slido in and out all the time. So we appreciate you humoring us, but it really is an essential tool. As I mentioned, 5,200 data points that we've been collecting on different polls. That's not including like names, fields like that. That's actual information that we can use to help inform policy discussions. And then we started using Qualtrics more for just these like very small sample questions. You see we had 15 questions on really targeted issues. And we got great responses on those, almost 800 responses on just a couple of questions sent out in a nightly email. So thank you to all of you who are responding to surveys at 9 p.m. Really appreciate it.
And really, we go back through and review all of the results that we get. So we're not just getting those and filing them away. We're spending hours reviewing them, and then they impact what we do. So Carson, HB 198 is a great example of this one.
Yeah, so HB 198, for those of you who don't remember or who have intentionally blocked it out of your mind, this was the billboard bill this year. There was a lot of conversation starting before the session trying to figure out what the appropriate distancing was for billboard relocation. I think there were 7 or 8 total mechanisms that we sampled in some way. Some of these were through Slido in meetings, some of these were survey questions, but you can see this is just one example. These were 2 models, and it's kind of small text, but you can see where we were able to find one mechanism for relocation that strong majority, almost 100% of people were concerned about in some degree, versus another mechanism which a narrow majority were actually comfortable with. So we're able to take those, and sometimes it takes 7 or 8 different mechanisms, and trying to figure out what makes sense or what people can live with, or even like what our sandbox is. And if we can find that, then we can come back to the LPC, present those as mechanisms. We get more buy-in from the LPC and the board, and then we can take those and try to convert those into legislation to, again, get to a point where we don't love it, but we can live with it.
That's right. So, we have a lot of ways that we engage with you. We have LPC morning briefings, the nightly emails, and we want to make sure that you're, 1, aware of those. So if anyone's not aware of these, we want to make sure you are, and 2, that you're aware of how we use some of them. So 1, legislative recap and Friday facts. For our nightly emails in those, we have a 51% average open rate, which isn't that bad for a blast out email. But this one is actually exciting to us. So the daily updates, what we send out every day, 3,486 subscribers. We have 1,700 of you opening that email. So in raw numbers, when we talk about the League Army, when we put out an email and say, reach out to your legislators, 1,700 of you are opening that up, and many of you are reacting to that. So thank you that. If you are not getting the emails, if you feel like you've been bumped off the list, we didn't blacklist you. Things just happen sometimes. But reach out to us. We want to make sure everyone is getting that. And then we want to talk a little bit in the last few minutes, what does a week at the Capitol look like? What does this look like? And how do we use all the different things? So 1, this is a horrible screenshot of just 4 of our calendars, because Microsoft won't let you put more than 4 calendars on at one time to show it, but just all the things going on. So we're going to run through some of the ways that we get the feedback from you and what we do. So first off, we check in with our league officers regularly. So we have a call on Tuesday mornings with the governor's office, with just our league officers and with the governor's office, where we go through different issues and issues that we have, things they like to talk about. And Mayor Walker, he was up there. He talked about that in his meeting earlier. He spent a ton of time at the Capitol this year, so sorry for your business, but thank you for all the help that you gave us, because he was up there all the time. First Vice President Kate Bradshaw up there is a lot. You can see, this is my favorite picture over there. We're having an officer's call out in the hallway. So Cam and Kate and I are all on the same call. We're just sitting next to each other with headphones in so we didn't get the echo. But we're checking in all the time and getting updates and thoughts on prioritizations from the officers. And then every morning, Carson, we have the morning briefing.
Yeah, it is remarkable, the growth and participation that we've seen in the morning briefing. Again, thinking back to when I started at the league, this was maybe 10 or 15 people who happened to be on the Capitol. We started using Zoom before COVID, actually. We started using Zoom to try to encompass more people, and I think that list is now up to 100 some odd emails. And it's been really, really instrumental in both our ability to communicate what's going on a daily basis, because things move so fast, but it also gives us a great opportunity to get feedback. There are some bills where we see a substitute drop the night before, and we'll send it to a couple people, but for us to be able to say, hey, everybody, take a look at this, give us your feedback within 45 minutes before committee, it is an indispensable tool. So thank you for all your participation. That's open to any members, so please let us know if you'd like to participate in that.
So what we do in that morning briefing is we go through all the bills that are going to be up in committee either that afternoon or coming up the next morning. So just as one example, this is the halfway point through the session. 21 bills up in committee in 24 hours. And so we've got to look at those 24 bills or 21 bills, figure out if there's a position change that we need to take. Do we need to send out a question on it? Do we need to look at the substitute? How do we engage with it? Make assignments about who's going to go talk to which legislators, and that all happens at that morning briefing. So yeah, like Carson said, if you feel like you're out of the loop and you would really love to join a call from 10:15 to 10:45 during the legislative session, let us know. On top of that, obviously, floor time. This is when the bills are actually up on the floor for vote and not going down as much as they used to. But we love both these pictures. So Alexa, if you haven't met Alexa yet, you're missing out. She's our new policy analyst. But in the left hand here, you've got Alexa with 5 different screens open, trying to keep track of what's going on the floor. And another one with 3 screens going open. And this one where Carson is very excited is one of my favorite pictures of the session. This was during the middle of morning briefing.
And Isaac deserves credit for that one. Yeah, that was when we had the transportation utility fee vote come up in the middle of daily briefing, and everything just went on pause. Like I mentioned, bills can just pop up at any time. And I think we were all pretty surprised at that outcome, but I was clearly did not have on an appropriate poker face for that moment.
Morning briefings among friends, so we could look very excited. And then, as all of you know, or if you don't know, I hope you do, Legislative Policy Committee, every Monday we check in with you. That's an example of one of our very overpacked agendas. This last year we went through 64 separate bills during our various LPCs, and only 64. Of the 279 that we're tracking, 64 bills, we have time to go through an LPC, and that's where we have to have all these different ways of communicating and talking about what's going on. On top of that, meetings, calls, hallway conversations. This one in the middle is great. This is Cameron and Jared, both on separate calls, both on their laptops, in the 8-minute drive from our office back to the Capitol after a strategy meeting, trying to deal with whatever was happening right then. A picture of Molly and I. Molly's on the phone. I had to call somebody, but Molly had the expertise. So I made the call and then handed it over and said, talk to Molly. She knows this issue. And then if you've never been up to the Capitol, there are dancers in bird costumes that you have to navigate around on the regular. That is a real issue if you're up there at the Capitol. And then we haven't even talked about committee meetings yet. So Carson, tell us about all these fun committee meetings we go to.
Committee meetings are a joy. No, committee meetings are where a lot of the work does happen. Typically, you don't have a lot of time for substantive debate on the floor, so committee meetings are where the public can really weigh in, even if it's in 30 seconds. But yeah, you see an example here. I think that was HB 37 that Representative Dunnigan was presenting. You can see all the different stakeholders. It's kind of fun because you can kind of tell what bill they're on based on who's in the room at the time. And you have some committee meetings which are completely packed and standing room only, and they do overflow rooms, and you have to run in if you want to try to be able to talk. You have others where it's totally empty. There was one where they were missing a quorum and filibustered about a bill for a good long time. And it's always just kind of a mixed bag, but you know, we as league staff, the extended family, always try to make sure that we have a presence on a bill that we really care about. That doesn't always work when we have 22 bills in 24 hours, but we always try to make sure that we can make sure your voices are heard on issues. We don't always win committee fights, but we want to make sure that that point is made.
And that's one of the things we always want. If you want to come testify on a bill, if there's a bill that matters to your city, please, one, reach out to us and let us know so that we can coordinate. But I know some people have said, you know, I'd love to come testify on a bill, but it makes me a little nervous to get up there in committee and do it. We are more than happy to help you, you know, coach you through that, get you through. So if you'd like to be engaged in that way, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Staff debrief. So every night, then we huddle back up with the staff. We do our nightly email. Yes, we made it to Oregon for anyone tracking the Oregon Trail, and give you the nightly emails. If you're not getting those nightly emails, or you're just not opening them, we do put a lot of information about what bills were heard in committee that day, what we need feedback on, what's coming up, fights that are going on the floor. So that is where we're trying to give you as much information as we can on a daily basis, outside of just that morning briefing. And then finally, we leave the Capitol. And these are not unusual pictures. That one on the left, that's my car, all by itself in the parking lot, probably at like 10 at night. And then this one's Alexa's car, covered in snow because we were the last ones out and it was covered in snow. And then that's the lobbyist lounge, where we sort of hang out with, also we're the ones who turn on the lights a lot of the time at night. So we're there all day long. We don't joke when we say we're really available virtually 24/7 during the legislative session. But just a lot of things that we're trying to juggle and we're trying to prioritize. And as we're using the Slido and the LPC and the morning briefings and the nightly emails and everything we're putting out there, it's because we want your feedback to help us make those priorities.
Unfortunately, when Justin sent out the ask for us to send pictures in for this presentation, all of us sent some kind of picture with our car being the last one in the parking lot.
Repeatedly, yeah.
It sounds like I'm bragging. I'm not. It's unfortunate. One fun little side quest was the public safety survey. These always end up happening during the legislative session when we actually write them. I always wanted to quickly mention the most recent one from survey results last year. We add on to each year. So this year has 4 prior years of survey results, 214,000 data points on public safety employment trends. I know this is still a concern for many of you. There's been some pay increases, but what we try to do is provide you, unfortunately it happens during the session, what we try to do is provide you with information on ways and best practices that you can retain employees. We survey them. We try to ask your firefighters, your police officers, your paramedics, things that are affecting their morale, things that are make them more likely to stay in your agency. So this is just a quick mention. We will be distributing this in Friday Facts. It'll be on our website. Please take a look if you're interested in that. We want it to be a useful resource, but always comes out during the session when there's a handful of other things going on. So just wanted to make a pitch for that.
So again, just we're involved and we're trying to get your feedback on as much as we can. As you can see, there are so many bills out there, and we hope that you see that so many of these bills are moving through and passing that we have to prioritize things. We can't fight everything because of the trends that we're seeing out there. So we need your feedback. So do not hesitate to reach out to us throughout the year. But also know, and I don't want to ever overpromise thing, that we all have different opinions about where some of this policy should go. And that's why we bring things back to the LPC to take positions. Not everybody's going to be happy with where everything goes. We're not happy with where a lot of the bills go, but we work to try to get the best outcome we can. So please engage with us. Please let us know what you need, what priorities you have through the interim, and we'll turn the time over to Molly and her panel.